It's about truth. It's about disclosure. It's about transparency. And if it means that I don't get my day in the spotlight, then that's okay, because it's not about that. It never was about that. I didn't leave the Department of Defense because I wanted my day in the spotlight. I left the Department of Defense, ironically enough, to finish the very mission they gave me in the first place. I didn't ask for it. I'm not a UFO guy. I'm not a ufologist. I never have been. I never will be. I'm a counterterrorism and counterespionage guy. I do counterintelligence, counterinsurgencies. That's what I do. And it just so happens that in 2008, I was asked to apply those same skill sets into the UFO community. But I'm not a UFO guy. And so for me, it's all about the truth. Whether I'm hunting a terrorist or a spy or a UFO, the bottom line is the truth is the truth. I'm a counterterrorism and counterespionage guy. I do counterintelligence, counterinsurgencies. That's what I do. And it just so happens that in 2008, I was asked to apply those same skill sets into the UFO community. The bottom line is the truth is the truth. I'm a counterterrorism and counterespionage guy. I do counterintelligence, counterinsurgencies. That's what I do. And it just so happens that in 2008, I was asked to apply those same skill sets into the UFO community. The bottom line is the truth is the truth. It just so happens that in 2008, I was asked to apply those same skill sets into the UFO community. The bottom line is the truth is the truth. I'm a counterterrorism and counterespionage guy. I do counterintelligence, counterinsurgencies. That's what I do. The bottom line is the truth is the truth. I'm a counterterrorism and counterespionage guy. I do counterintelligence, counterinsurgencies. That's what I do. The bottom line is the truth is the truth. It just so happens that in 2008, I was asked to apply those same skill sets into the UFO community. The bottom line is the truth is the truth.
The Central Intelligence Agency is set up to deceive. That's what their job is, in fact. Counterintelligence, Lou, counterintelligence means I have to lie. That's my job. So what is counterintelligence? What are some of the methods? That's something that the UFO field could study instead of people going off about, did Lou make a comment? That doesn't go anywhere. What is that going to do for you? Who cares about Lue Elizondo ultimately, except as a pawn of the CIA threat motion? Otherwise, it's just drivel, right? So, and how, it could be anybody. They could have gotten someone else instead in that program and dressed them up for the part. I don't think, it's not a special kind of assignment that they got for Lou. I just think that he kind of fit what they were doing, and they felt this is a guy who can pull it off. He's done a lot of counterintelligence. But I think what's important is, what is counterintelligence? Just in a nutshell, I need to deceive another country about what my activities are, militarily, espionage-wise, etc. And I need them to believe that something is happening that's totally different from what is actually happening. So I need to create a counter-narrative to the truth. That's counterintelligence. I need to lie to get people to believe. So therefore, Elizondo has a lot of experience. He's a professional liar. That's just a fact. And expecting the truth from people like that, or the Central Intelligence Agency, counterintelligence agents in general, is craziness. Whoever thought of such a thing? And so the way they've rolled it out and packaged it up and put a lot of money behind it and the media behind it, yes, but I think we've come past a phase, we are all kind of graduating in our own awareness. And this is pretty obvious, so this one is getting pretty wobbly.
It's clear to me now that Lue Elizondo is deceiving and manipulating the community. 100%. He admitted to that on our interview Friday by using sock puppet accounts to manipulate and deceive us, which... so how can you trust someone who is going to go and create a secret account? Not only just create a secret account and post on it, but he creates these in-groups and out-groups of people who are in on the secret. And then he, shares this special knowledge with them and really gets them to go out and attack his critics. We can't see what the tweets that he posted under these sock puppets anymore because they've been deleted. But, he made it seem like on the interview that he was just responding to people who are doing personal attacks on his family. That's a load of BS. There wasn't really any attacks on his family before this whole Who's Lue documentary started, and that was after he deleted his sock puppet account. He was using that account to attack people like Mick West and Stephen Greenstreet and, rile people up and sow division. And to what end is really my question now. Why he says that his audience isn't UFO Twitter. If his audience isn't UFO Twitter, why does he have multiple sock puppet accounts engaging with UFO Twitter and doing all of this nonsense? Like it just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm at a loss, really.
Thank you very much. Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to the cabin. I am broadcasting live from the Apocalypse Cabin. Some of you are aware that I generally don't like it when I am sort of forced to do a broadcast from the cabin. The internet here tends to be somewhat wonky, and I apologize. StreamYard has been buggy very much lately, and it usually when you add yourself to the stream, it unmutes your microphone, but lately it doesn't do that. You have to do it manually. So thank you to a kind viewer who's calling my cell phone to let me know. Hey, we're improving here. At least I didn't talk for a full 10 minutes before realizing that. So there are some things going on, and I thought it was important enough to interrupt my cabin time here. It also just so happens that I'm supposed to be building a porch onto the cabin today. Finally got rid of a big stump right in the way of the porch. We burned it for a full-on 3 weekends, and it's gone. But as luck would have it, there was no one at the stone quarry place today to purchase the stone to make the patio for the porch. So and I thought that these issues that have been raised last night on Twitter were important enough that I wanted to address them right away. For those unaware, yesterday, John Greenewald Jr. from the Black Vault did an excellent report, a deep dive into Mr. Lue Elizondo's IG complaint. For those unaware, Lue Elizondo felt that he was being treated unfairly or defamed or slandered, or people were issuing incorrect statements about him from the Pentagon. Some of you may recall that the Pentagon issued a statement saying that Lue Elizondo was not the director of a program called the ATIP. And additionally, there was a statement that Lue Elizondo had no responsibilities related to this. And again, I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to get sued, so I got to say that. So John from the Black Vault did an excellent presentation. By the way, I'm a terrible show host. I will add it to the description of the video if Sixth Sense could help me in the live chat. Sixth Sense holding the peanut gallery down. We got to think of a better name for our live chat here. Please do put a link to John Greenewald's excellent reporting on and deep dive into that IG report. Now, there are some things that are very troubling to me in John Greenewald's report, specifically related to the number, and there are many of them, of very inconsistent things between Lue Elizondo's public statements on podcasts or wherever in the media and his statements made in this IG complaint letter. Some things just don't add up. And so recently, last night, in fact, I noticed that there was a statement from Lue Elizondo, and I have it right here. Lue Elizondo is now saying on Twitter, and here, I'm going to share my screen. This is his public Twitter, but we're still going to cite fair use. This is transformative work. We're educating the public about this former Pentagon official claiming to run a UFO program, Lue Elizondo. And here is his statement on Twitter. Lue Elizondo, and I think this was made in response to the report and show of John Greenewald from the Black Vault. He says, quote, "I was the director of ATIP. It has been well documented. I have been the subject of a campaign of defamatory disinformation by multiple parties." And he says again, thanks to Todd McMurtry. Now, some of you may not be aware of that name, Todd McMurtry, but I was well aware of that name because I had closely followed the story of one Kyle Rittenhouse. Todd McMurtry is actually the attorney who is representing Kyle Rittenhouse in suing all of those media outlets who, I don't even want to use the term, I don't know what the proper term is, slandered him, reported factually inaccurate information on Kyle Rittenhouse, whatever you're, and by the way, we don't do politics here. So before anybody starts thinking that I'm a MAGA hat wearing right-wing, supporter here, I am an independent. I believe that both sides of the political aisle are filled with criminals, and you don't get extra points for picking one side that is less criminal in your opinion than the other side that is criminal. They're all criminals. That's my personal opinion. We stay out of politics here, but it should be noted and for sure understood that Todd McMurtry is sort of known to be a very right-wing, conservative, sort of a person. And he has made many statements that some people have claimed. Now, he's a lawyer, so I have to be very careful here. Some people have claimed that Todd McMurtry has made statements that could be considered either racist or transphobic, etc. I'm not going to comment on that. It's just enough to say that people are saying that. In fact, I got three separate messages from people before our current broadcast right now who said, you have to share this tweet. You have to share that tweet. You have to share this that he said. You have to share that he said. So Todd McMurtry is sort of a very controversial character and has taken an awful lot of criticism for taking on cases like Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, I do have to say that I don't believe that journalists should be sued unless they show malice and get things 100% factually wrong. And then they create harm by getting things factually wrong or damage somebody's reputation, cause them emotional distress because they're literally lying. In the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, it is well established that multiple major media outlets reported completely factually inaccurate information about that young man. Regardless of what you think, I don't want to get into the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. So Lue Elizondo, directly after John's broadcast about the IG, the deep dive, says, I was the director of ATIP. It has been well documented. I've been the subject of a campaign of defamatory disinformation by multiple parties. And that is in line with the claims that he makes in his IG complaint letter. So Todd McMurtry says this, and he is replying to Black Vault's post about his broadcast. He says, surely hope you don't defame Lue Elizondo. It is well documented that he was the director of ATIP, and any participation in a plan to cast doubt on that truth is a knowing effort to defame and sow disinformation. It's legally actionable. And immediately Twitter went nuts with this guy, Todd McMurtry, saying this directly to John from the Black Vault. And there is quite the Twitter flurry threads going on right now about this. Now, I thought in first seeing this that this is very troubling. All of you know that I am a big believer in free speech. And also the fact that a lawyer apparently, and we'll get into more details of that, a lawyer apparently under the employment of Lue Elizondo, at least to many people, including me here, this looked like a legal threat. He's warning him. One can argue, whether this could be considered a legal threat or not. I'm not a lawyer. Haven't had the opportunity to send this to any other lawyers to say, what do you think of this? But people on Twitter, it should be said, are saying this is a threat, myself included. Originally, I thought this is sort of a legal threat. And that's very troubling, especially considering that the person that this statement is directed at, or this warning is directed at, is John from the Black Vault. Now, many of you know that I'm not one to heap praise on anyone, but anybody that's been involved in UFOs or listened to John from the Black Vault will understand that John is one of the most, he's somebody that I could learn a lot from. He doesn't yell and scream. He doesn't make statements without, some sort of evidence. And it's important also that I would say this about John from the Black Vault. There was a man much wiser than me that I got to know before his death, a UFO investigator that we all know and loved by the name of Stanton Friedman. And Stanton Friedman had an excellent saying, and he impressed upon me the importance of this. Stanton Friedman would say, be sure, Stephen, that you have facts in hand before putting mouth in gear. Such an important thing. I'm going to say it again. Stanton Friedman's statement is, be sure to have facts in hand before putting mouth in gear. Now, some people will know that I didn't always, follow that advice very well. There's been several times where I go popping off and yelling or like getting upset, making statements without having facts in hand. But if you go and listen to John from the Black Vault, he's very professional. He's very matter of fact. He's very fact-based, evidence-based, research-based. And he's calm as a cucumber as he's doing a presentation. And like I said, I could learn, I for one at least, could learn a lot about how the proper way you should do things is from John from the Black Vault. So personally, you guys know, everybody knows this. Truth Seekers has been threatened to be sued many, many times, mostly due to our coverage of what I call the UFO cosmic con artists. We've covered fake psychics, we've covered fake UFO whistleblowers, we've covered all of these sort of less than scrupulous people that I believe are running a con on the general public in order to make money. So we here, I have been threatened to be sued a lot. In fact, I've sort of made it a joke now that when I get an angry lawyer letter threatening to sue me or the show, I hang it up in my office. And there's a bunch of them now. So to be very honest, my first thought was, if Lue Elizondo or Lue Elizondo's lawyer had said that to me, I would understand it. And so would most people, because we do some nutty things here. Let's just be honest. Dressing up like Nick Pope and taking a lie detector test is just one recent example of that, of some of the things that we do here. And by the way, I have consulted with attorneys on that issue. That's considered a comedic parody, and it's very difficult to sue somebody for that. Maybe, just maybe, I'm not as crazy as some people think, and I do that for a reason. But my point here is that the first thought when I read this was, if Lue Elizondo or his lawyer had threatened me, or let's not even call it a threat, had made that statement towards me and my show, I would understand it. We do nutty things here. I go off half-cocked and say things that I probably shouldn't say. I'm not a trained journalist or trained researcher. It's taken me years to figure out the proper way to do things, and that is to say things like, in my opinion, based on the facts that we have shown you, I believe this. That's the proper way to do things. And what is so striking and shocking to me about what just happened is that John from the Black Vault is the guy that we should all emulate. He does it the right way. He shows you the facts, he shows you the evidence, and then he offers his opinion based on the facts and the evidence that he has shown you. And certainly there should be no claims of, slander or defamation based on a guy doing it like John does it, which I think he does it better than most people, the right way. I mean, even in our introduction, as much as I like Dark Journalist is essentially claiming that Lue Elizondo is a CIA disinformation agent. And there's no verifiable facts to prove that, so that's just somebody offering their opinion. That could be considered actionable, I guess, or suit-worthy, more so than what John from the Black Vault just did. And while we're on this subject, maybe, just maybe, the second thing I thought is that this report put out by John from the Black Vault must have sincerely struck a nerve for Lue Elizondo to have to go to Twitter and, I suppose, alert his lawyer to make a statement or issue some sort of warning to John from the Black Vault. By the way, I want to thank oh geez, gosh, Impersonator Sominium, kind and generous $5 super chat. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. It is much appreciated. This also made me ask some questions. The first question I had was, all right, I have to explain why I thought this first. My first thought was, is this guy even Lue Elizondo's lawyer, or is just some fan that happens to be a lawyer? Because, by the way, some of the people that have threatened to sue me here, even going so far as to send me, it's called a cease and desist letter, but I call it an angry lawyer letter. The lawyer will send you a letter, says, how dare you say this about my client, in legalese though, and cease and desist from your defamatory actions. And, they word it to be very aggressive, warning you that if you don't shut up about their client, there may be legal consequences. However, most of the people that have threatened to sue me, even in writing, in one case, it turned out to be a very close friend of a fake psychic. In other words, this lawyer, who did have a law degree, but he was not even legally licensed to practice law in the state that he lived in. He just happened to have a law degree and be friends with a fake psychic that we busted here. So, my first thought was, is this a real lawyer? Of course, yeah. So not only is he a real lawyer, this man is a very well accomplished lawyer and takes on big cases like Kyle Rittenhouse. So my next question was, has Lue Elizondo actually paid him or retained him to represent him? And so I reached out to this lawyer, Todd V. McMurtry, and I just want to thank him because he did have the courtesy to call me back. I let him know I was on a deadline. He gave me a statement, and this is the only on the record statement that he was willing to share with me. And I'm going to share my screen. Some people, when I do these things, sometimes when I don't share the email, somebody says, how do we know you really got that email? Or, it is what it is, friends. So I don't think he'll mind me. He says, for quotation, Lue Elizondo has retained me to provide legal advice about various commentators and public officials making false and defamatory statements. This was the only thing that he would give me an on-the-record comment on. So what does this mean? This means that we do know now that this isn't just some random friend or UFO fan of Lue Elizondo. This is a real attorney with a real office. He's a well-known attorney that handles mostly, I believe he told me 80% of his work is defamation lawsuits. So what this means is that Lue Elizondo has employed an attorney who specializes in defamation to provide him with legal advice about various commentators and public officials making false and defamatory statements. Now, what else I can say is that some of you may recall that Corey Goode, well-known secret space program, quote, whistleblower, who I believe is a fraud and a phony, famously more than 2 years ago, Corey Goode began suing everybody that had anything negative to say about him on the internet. And by the way, that case has still not been to court. It's been slowly winding its way through the court system for 2+ years, with motions and things. No one has been to court over Corey Goode suing everybody. But I wanted to talk about the Corey Goode situation because Corey Goode sued all of his critics, commentators, people making videos about how ridiculous the things that he talked about were, or the statements that he made. And whether Corey Goode's claims have any basis in reality or not, his legal claims, I mean, Corey Goode suing a bunch of people had a chilling effect on free speech, absolutely chilling effect on free speech. And it's interesting to note that of all of Corey Goode's critics that were sued, I was one of them that was not sued. And to be honest with you, I was amazed that we weren't included in those lawsuits. I was happy because some of you may be aware of a man called C.W. Chanter, who was Corey Goode's biggest critic. And even a baseless, lawsuit that is garbage costs you money to defend. And C.W. Chanter, so far in the Corey Goode lawsuit, last I heard, has spent upwards of $15,000 to defend against a frivolous lawsuit claiming that he somehow damaged the reputation of a guy that's running around telling everybody that he time traveled and fought reptilian aliens in space. Somehow, this lawyer from New Jersey gets sued because Corey Goode said that him talking about him on the internet and how ridiculous and stupid and childish Corey Goode's stories were somehow damaged him. And now that guy is out $15,000 to defend himself from a lawsuit brought by Corey Goode. And that lawsuit had a chilling effect on free speech because there used to be many, many people that would be very, very critical of Corey Goode. But for the past few years, since he launched his lawsuits on everyone, including his former business partners, the point is that since Corey Goode started suing everybody, a lot of people, most people, stopped talking about Corey Goode. Why? They don't want to get dragged into a frivolous lawsuit that they're going to have to spend $15,000 defending, even though it's bull. And I suppose that some people are already comparing Lue Elizondo now. This is what's very problematic for Lue Elizondo, that people are now comparing Lue Elizondo to Corey Goode. And I don't think that that's a comparison, or, I don't believe that Lue Elizondo wants to be lumped in with somebody like Corey Goode. But what we see here is that Lue Elizondo has retained legal counsel, at least in Lue Elizondo. He's got a really good, real lawyer that specializes in defamation cases. Corey Goode has a cult member friend of his who is representing him. Take from that what you will. is she a real lawyer? Yeah, but she doesn't specialize in defamation cases. She certainly doesn't specialize in RICO cases. And I don't know, Corey Good made some ridiculous RICO argument that there was some grand conspiracy against him to, damage his reputation. I want to thank Madam Two Swords for a kind and generous, what is that, 249 super sticker. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. Much, much appreciated. So what we get here is, I believe this is going to backfire. But I'm kind of torn here, because does Lue Elizondo have the right to defend himself if people are, damaging his reputation by saying factually inaccurate things? Yes, I believe he does have that right. However, in the case of this John from the Black Vault, all John from the Black Vault did was read from his own, Lue Elizondo's own words, and then point out that there was many, many inconsistencies between the written IG complaint and past statements that Lue Elizondo has made on podcasts and media appearances. That certainly, to me, is not suit-worthy. That, to me, is not, slander or defamation. It is John simply reading from Lue Elizondo's own words and then showing largely what he did is he read from the IG complaint, and then he showed some other source of Lue Elizondo saying something that contradicts what's in the IG report. And it's also important to note that Lue Elizondo is a public figure. He made himself a public figure. Public figures, you're allowed to talk about them. You're allowed to have an opinion on them. You're allowed to scrutinize their statements. It is certainly newsworthy. It is certainly allowable that, I can talk about any public figure. When you become a public figure, the media may talk about you. And I just don't understand some, big burly tough guy, Lue Elizondo, getting upset because people are pointing out that he's made many inconsistent statements. Now, insofar as these statements, I'm going to offer my opinion and say that I have a problem with Lue Elizondo saying it is well documented. We'll go back to that statement, because both the lawyer and he have said it is well documented. This is the statement. I was the director of ATIP. It has been well documented. I have been the subject of a campaign of defamatory disinformation by multiple parties. And then the lawyer goes on to say it is well documented that he was the director of ATIP. But here's the problem. The Pentagon says he was not the director of ATIP. The Pentagon says that he had no responsibilities related to UFOs. And even in Elizondo's own words lately, that would seem to be a true statement, because in his IG complaint, he basically admits, okay, don't call it it wasn't a program, it was an activity. And I'm going to be very careful here now that I know Lue Elizondo's got a crackpot lawyer, not crackpot, a bulldog. I really meant bulldog. Please don't sue me. This guy, Todd McGurtry, regardless of what you think about his politics, he's a bulldog of a lawyer, this guy. So what I will say is that my sense of what is really happening here is based on Lue Elizondo's own statements, based on facts released by the Pentagon, based on facts released in the book by Lukatsky, the director of OSAP. I believe that Lue Elizondo had no assigned responsibilities insofar as UFOs. He's even said that. In his IG report, he basically says, okay, I was told I was allowed to continue these activities as long as they didn't interfere with my primary activities. So what we get here is, what we get here is, how do we get here? We got here because of, I believe, because of factually inaccurate statements that were offered to media personalities like Leslie Kean and Blumenthal and others. Who was the primary source of the New York Times article that we now know was filled with a lot of factually inaccurate statements? Well, the source was Lue Elizondo. So, Lue Elizondo getting upset because people saying he wasn't the director of ATIP, his own statements seemed to indicate that there was no program and there was no funding for the program. And this was sort of a hobby, an extracurricular activity that he did that was not his primary or assigned responsibility. In other words, it wasn't Lue Elizondo's full-time job or responsibility to investigate UFOs for the Pentagon. I think even he would admit that. It was not his full-time job or responsibility to investigate UFOs. He had other responsibilities, and this leads to, other things that we can talk about and think about. Let's forget about UFOs for a moment, and let's use, the JFK assassination for an example. Is it okay that somebody within the Pentagon who is being paid to perform one job just suddenly starts using Pentagon time and resources and their time and resources to investigate the murder of JFK if that's not their assigned job or responsibility? I don't think so. I have a problem with that. I'm a taxpayer. And if somebody's a government employee for the Pentagon and they're being paid to do a job, they shouldn't be spending their time while they're being paid to do a certain job to do something else. And it appears to me, based on statements made by the Pentagon and others, including Elizondo, that he took it upon himself, I suppose, to start investigating UFOs, or he was asked by somebody else, according to the IG report, to become the director of a program that didn't exist. And this is where things get very, very murky, right? Why is everything so murky? Why can't we get a straight answer? Why can't somebody from the Pentagon sit down with somebody, preferably somebody like John from the Black Vault, who is familiar with the intergovernment workings, and give us straight answers? Was there a program called ATIP? According to some statements, no, there wasn't. According to the letter from Senator Harry Reid, yes, there was. And by the way, on that subject of well-documented, the only document that Lue Elizondo can offer us saying that he was the director of a program called ATIP is from Senator Harry Reid, who nobody trusts because, for several reasons, nobody trusts Harry Reid. One of the big reasons you can't trust Harry Reid is he's been caught lying before. Senators are not immune to lying. There's so many problems here with this story, and it gets so murky. Senator Harry Reid got caught lying about Mitt Romney and his tax returns. He got caught dead to rights issuing factually inaccurate statements about Mitt Romney. This is very, very problematic. So and by the way, Harry Reid was deeply involved in the creation of OSAP and giving $22 million to his close friend and political donor, Bob Bigelow. So pardon me if I need a little more proof than somebody that's involved in what I believe is some sort of scam to defraud the government out of $22 million. I'm talking specifically about OSAP. Do me or any other taxpayer want $22 million of our money going to investigate dino beavers, stargates, werewolves, ghosts, goblins, and demons on some ranch in the middle of nowhere? No. And in my opinion, that's a waste of $22 million of taxpayer dollars. Harry Reid is the person that initiated that and was in on that. So for Lue Elizondo to say it's well documented, I was the leader of ATIP. And people on Twitter are saying congratulations, including me. We're saying congratulations. You were the director of an imaginary program in the Pentagon. It's not a real program. And I think one of the other things that's very problematic here for Lue Elizondo is that he has a British counterpart, and that would be Nick Pope. And his British counterpart, Nick Pope, claimed the same thing, that he ran a British government UFO program. Now, in the case of Nick Pope, we can clearly establish that Nick Pope highly embellished or just lied. Nick Pope did not run any British UFO program. No, he was a secretary who worked for the Ministry of Defense. So part of me thinks that Lue Elizondo may be getting an unfair bias placed against him, partially due to Nick Pope, his British counterpart, pulling what many think are the same thing, lying about a government job that you never had in order to profit from the UFO community. Many people think that Lue Elizondo did the same thing that Nick Pope has been pretty much dead to rights caught doing, which is to over embellish, make things up, claim that you were more important than you were, claim you ran or were. Nick Pope said he was the director of a British UFO program. We know that to be 100% factually false right now. I'm going to share some of the things from Twitter as well. Facts are facts. Don't worry about him. Carry on. My fish with a kind and generous. Is that $2? Yes, I believe so. You guys know this. I hate doing shows on a laptop. I'm a bit visually impaired, so you'll have to forgive me and excuse me if I can't read everything. We're going to go to Twitter. But before we do, actually, I have a statement from John Greenewald, because I reached out to him saying, hey, what's going on here? And what do you think about this? And I have a statement from John Greenewald. 1 second. Let's kind of make this bigger here. Okay. All right. So in a statement, John Greenewald said, in my view, I did not defame anyone, and to float those words is not only telling, but incredibly damaged to the entire investigative process. We are all on an individual journey, our own, each of us, to discover the truth. Whatever that may be, my path took me to vet the claims of a former taxpayer-paid government employee who made claims about a taxpayer-funded program or effort. John Greenewald goes on to say, what country do I live in if I can't question those claims? What country do I live in where it is wrong to use verifiable evidence vetting the claims of someone I once paid for through my taxes to have a job? What country do I live in where my efforts to bring as much verifiable evidence to the table, along with properly labeling and expressing my opinion, is a legal threat worthy, veiled or otherwise, to be thrown at me on Twitter? The tweets from an attorney and Lue Elizondo were posted online to rile up a digital mob before my video was even done playing. Okay, so they did post it during his broadcast. The result was a digital lynching by a small but noisy group of Mr. Elizondo's supporters. Anyone that has a following and has followers should be careful when posting such legal jargon and veiled accusations. The result is much more damaging than one might think, but sadly, maybe that was the intent. Bottom line, I did nothing wrong. I exercised my freedom to information. I exercised my right to express my opinion. I vetted taxpayer-paid people and taxpayer-funded programs and posed questions that I would 100% defend under oath in a courtroom. None of that is in the legal definition of defamation or sue-worthy. It's not even threat-worthy. Anyone who decides to talk that defamation talk about what I did is telling the general public more about themselves than they are about me. And again, I think even that is very well said and well spoken. So what we have here is Lue Elizondo. I think he's just butthurt, and he doesn't like people digging into his claims and pointing out the inconsistencies. But that, to me, I agree with John. That's not defamation. One can argue that people should be allowed. If you're making fantastical claims like you were the director of a $22 million taxpayer-funded program, and then it turns out, no, you weren't, people are allowed to talk about that. And by the way, I still think it's murky. Did he run a program? Well, apparently there was no program. There was no employees. There was no people at the Pentagon with the assigned responsibilities of this program. There was no funding, but then later we see in the IG complaint, I believe that there was no funding, but in the IG complaint, Lue Elizondo claims that they got $10 million in funding, but then somebody else sucked away that funding somehow, apparently. Like I said, all of this is very murky, and I don't understand why we can't get a straight answer. I also don't understand why Lue Elizondo can't, tell us the truth about what government agency he now works for. And I get it, maybe he has an NDA, but he should be able to tell us who he's a government contractor for. I believe that he's claiming that he's a government contractor for Space Force, but I've reached out for comment to Space Force, and so has John Greenewald from the Black Vault, and they won't comment on whether Lue Elizondo works for Space Force or not. Why? We can't know if he's telling the truth about being a contractor for Space Force. I don't understand any of this. And like I said, when you get into the situation with these former government people, everything gets incredibly murky. Why is it so murky? Why can't we get a straight answer from the government? Is Lue Elizondo employed by you as a contractor? And if so, what agency is he working for? And we can get into some of the other things too. And by the way, again, because this guy's got a lawyer, I have to say this is my opinion. In my opinion, Lue Elizondo, he filled out those forms to get those 3 videos released, but those 3 videos were supposed to be for internal use only. They were never supposed to go to the media. They were in his, care or possession, and somehow they get blasted all over the media. There's a whole investigation going on about how those materials that were never intended to be released to the public were released to the media. And we know how they were released. Somebody met Chris Mellon in the Pentagon parking lot and gave them to him, and then he leaked them to the New York Times. This is extremely problematic. And how is a guy who was involved in that situation not understanding that there's going to be investigation about that? It doesn't make any sense. And it also doesn't make any sense that Lue Elizondo would be able to continue employment with the government after being involved in something like that. But again, I'm no lawyer and I'm no expert in the declassification of classified information, including videos. UFO John Doe is here and says, "Hey, Stephen, great to catch a show this week. As good show, keep kicking down the doors," right? Yeah, Greenewald should come on sometime. Lue is desperate and making noise. That's what a lot of people think. This is an act of desperation. Originally, I believe that his book was supposed to come out in April, but it would appear that that was delayed. And I don't know why that is. And some people are speculating that he's just trying to salvage whatever he can and muddy these waters so that he can continue to make money from the UFO community. I'm not sure what I think about that. Would I hire him to? No, I wouldn't hire him to speak about UFOs because of his inconsistent statements, and we don't really know what he actually did that involved UFOs at the Pentagon. We know what he says he did. Get us some documents. And I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. If you investigate, if you're the director of an entire program for the Pentagon, there would be a mountain of paperwork about the program, about you, about your employees, about the funding, about oversight, about classification processes, about the reports you're generating, the investigations you're underway, the witnesses that you interviewed. There is nothing. There's one page, a page from Harry Reid saying that this guy ran a government program. That's it. And Harry Reid was in on it. So pardon me if I don't trust Harry Reid. But I want to be sure that we're very clear in that I did talk to this lawyer who basically said, yes, I've been retained, and that's the only comment officially that he will give me. Mr. Fish, with a kind and generous £2, says he wants them UFO dollars and he has UFO disease. Yeah, a lot of people think he wants the UFO money. What can we say? There's a lot of money. People don't understand. There's a ton of money to be made. And also, one of the troubling things about Lue Elizondo still being a government contractor is he was also involved in TTSA. TTSA literally promised investors that they were going to build a revolutionary spaceship with a revolutionary power source that would change the world. They basically promised investors hover cars and then didn't deliver on any of that, spent all the investors' money. No investor, to my knowledge, has ever gotten any money back. That's problematic. And, again, we get this cult-like atmosphere surrounding this guy. Why is there such a cult-like atmosphere? Why are you not allowed to question this situation, right? You can't question him about TTSA. You can't. He brings the NDA around, right? I just don't get it, right? 50 cents. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and my phone keeps ringing, and I'm not quite sure why, because I'm sure I'm not muted. I hope that's not anything important. It's in the other room. So, look, this is all I've really got for you, but I did want to share, interestingly, John Greenewald and others have, Stephen Greenstreet and others have taken to Twitter in defense, and I'm glad to see that there's so much defense of John Greenewald. What I do see is we've gotten, let's see, Stephen Greenstreet in defense of him. People are also saying that they're willing to contribute to a GoFundMe or a PayPal, to crowdfund a legal defense for John from the Blackvault, and that's very good to see. People are actually willing to put their money where their mouth is and defend John Greenewald's right to report on this stuff. Again, most of me is just surprised that it's John Greenewald that's getting this stuff leveled at him. Okay, so we have who is Axelrod. I'm sorry, I got to make this bigger. I can't read this. Who is Axelrod? Go kick rocks on Twitter. By the way, she's been running some spaces that I hear are fire lately. Says, dude, you came out as the head of a DoD UFO program. People are going to ask questions and pick you apart. You're a big burly military guy, so don't play the victim. Maybe answer questions, including the timeline that is broken. People aren't against you. They want answers. Yeah, I think that's very fair. Stephen Greenstreet says, former Pentagon intelligence agent and current DoD contractor, uses lawyer to threaten legal action against U.S. citizens who disagree with him. If this was about election results or the China-Taiwan conflict, it would be a big deal. But it's about UFOs, so it's just stupid. A lot of people know Stephen Greenstreet is not a big fan of Lue Elizondo lately. Alien Scientist says Greenstreet doubles down on Lue Elizondo and ATIP. I just want to know who the quintessential theoretical physicist was who brought Lue into the program, whatever the program was in the first place. That's from Alien Scientist. Stephen Greenstreet also says there is no evidence Elizondo was the director of an official Pentagon program called ATIP. There is also no evidence an official Pentagon program called ATIP beyond just a nickname for OSAP ever existed. And he offers his mini documentary as proof. Tom Mellett is one of the people who were sending me statements about McMurtry and some of the statements that he's made in the past. I don't know. Let's see them start telling the truth about transsexualism being a mental illness or about the implication of IQ disparities between different racial groups. So this lawyer is very, very controversial, apparently. And, it is what it is. Rather Be Squidding from Unidentified Celebrity Review. And by the way, good luck to those guys. I know maybe I shouldn't even be broadcasting today because everybody's tuning into that Big Phone Home 3. And even though I wasn't invited, I support that effort. Though I am somewhat of a bitter person when it comes to the government. I don't believe that writing a bunch of letters to the senators is effective. I don't think they care. If you really want to get a senator's attention, you need a couple $1 million. That's how to get their attention. But good luck to them. Rather Be Squidding says you're defending him by reading the You're defaming him by reading the IG complaint he wrote. Must have struck a nerve. Thanks for speaking truth to power, Blackfall. If the frivolous lawsuits happen, I'll up my Patreon support, and I'm sure I'm not alone. And John Greenewald says, do you feel we should be able to question the claims of a former U.S. government employee using as much evidence as we can and properly labeling opinions when they are? Me too. But some rather label it defamation and retweet their attorney to scare anyone who does. Why? Yeah. Area 503, who is, of course, the filmmaker behind the film Who's Lue? Lue Elizondo says he has tons of documentation to support his claims, then holds up the Harry Reid deathbed letter that has been on his website for years. That's like claiming you are a billionaire and then holding up a dollar bill to prove it. Yeah, this claim of it being well documented, there's one document. That's not well documented. If he had 3 documents saying that he was the director of ATIP, I may believe that, right? Rather be squidding, again, chiming in saying, where's the documentation? Where's the defamation? Or is this just more claims without any evidence to back it up? Yeah, so I think that this is going to be a hot issue going forward. We'll take some comments or questions from the live chat. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up here and go build a cabin. That's what I'm supposed to be here doing, you know? Yeah. And the Sixth Sense is kindly sharing the Who's Lue documentary. You may want to look into that if you're interested in whether Lue's claims are accurate. And I highly recommend, oh, there we go. I was able to make the chat bigger. I was able to, I would also highly recommend Stephen Greenstreet's Basement Office episode where he breaks down a lot of information that would seem to indicate that there is something not right about Lue Elizondo's story and that his public statements don't match the facts and evidence at hand, right? Calling it the tip. Oh. I have no doubt Lue worked mushroom caps hard, nicknamed A-Tip. Yes, and B. Baker is saying that John Greenewald is by far the most credible person in the UFO community. And an incredible amount of respect for him. Lue Elizondo is a scumbag counter-intel agent. Yeah, people don't like former government people, by the way. Everybody's free to express their opinion here, but please try to steer away from personal attacks or ad hominem attacks. Spooky says, follow John for years. He's the real deal. Well, I'm glad that we could lend our support to him. I support John and his right. I watched that entire thing and I didn't find anything that he did to be really the wrong thing to do, either morally, ethically, or legally. I think he's doing his job. It's somebody, you know, listen, it's his job to dig and it's his job to question things. Since when are we, especially people here in the UFO community, just supposed to, you know, take what a government employee tells us as truth? We're supposed to question these people. And for anybody, you know, look too, that's another point that I wanted to make. There is a cult-like group of Lue Elizondo followers who are right now cheering that, threatening John Greenewald with the lawyer, right? But as in this case, just as in the case of the Trump raid on Mar-a-Lago, you know, you have to remember that if they can do that to people you don't like, right, they can do it to people you like. And the same thing can happen. So, you know, I think we have to be very careful. Wow, I didn't know that happened. Stephen, I just wanted to know that before the show ends, that Sidvich gave out 10 memberships to your channel today. Congrats to your new members. And to Stephen, wow, Sidvich, so generous of you. Thank you so much. I can't believe you did that. So we've got 10 new channel members, courtesy of Sidvich. He sponsored 10 new channel members. Wow, great. great thing to do, Sidvich. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. Lord Ludicrous says the people attacking John are crazy. Yeah. It's really a problem, losing audio. Really. It's happened on and off. Yeah. You guys should be aware that I am here at the cabin and there is a wonky audio. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to wrap things up here. Mark says, we're going to see some interesting stuff. I'm making popcorn with lots of homemade butter. This is going to get good. Who has bigger members? We'll see Lou's. We will see. My bet is Lou's lawyer. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, great stuff, Sidvich. Thank you very much. It is much, much appreciated. Oh, I'm sorry for the audio issues. It's probably due to our wonky connection. For those that aren't aware, I'm broadcasting live from my apocalypse cabin, which is in the middle of nowhere. And there is a mile-long cable behind the cabin going to the nearest internet. Mark says John Greenewald is a hero, and I agree with that. Look, this kid, he was a 14-year-old kid starting to challenge the government. You got to have respect for that guy. But back to my point, if we allow people that are questioning people's stories to be threatened with lawsuits, then it can happen to anybody. And by the way, I do want to say that I think that some people have treated Lue Elizondo unfairly, but I certainly would never include John or Stephen Greenstreet even, or me in that category. There are some people who are just like, Lou's a liar and a CIA agent, and this is all a psyop, and Lou lied about everything. I don't think he lied about everything. I think he over embellished and maybe he overstated his involvement in UFOs while he worked for the Pentagon in order to make some money. I mean, we know that this, even the television show he was on, the opening has factually inaccurate statements in it. We can say that now, but at the time nobody knew that was factually inaccurate. Just like, I wish I had it with me. Somebody's asking where the Lou mask is. I wish I had it with me. It's at home in the studio. Somebody gave inaccurate information to the New York Times, and since Lou was the major source for that story, I would have to believe it was him who gave inaccurate information to the reporters and started this whole media frenzy, right? So listen, this is all I got for you. I thought it important enough, and I want to be sure. Go and express your support for John from the Black Vault. He does good work and he deserves better than this. He really does. Like I said, if Lou had sicked a lawyer on me, I would go, yeah, I'm an asshole. I say a lot of stupid things, but not John. John really is so factual and calm and matter of fact that I was shocked that it was him. Somebody texted me and said, Lue Elizondo is threatening journalists with a lawyer on Twitter. And then they sent me the link, and then they went, what journalists, right? And then when I heard it was John, I was just shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, right? Yeah. It can cause a lot of money, right? Yes, he did say he wanted to destroy ufology. I guess it's working. And I can't, I don't know what else to say about this situation. And I'm sorry for the audio issues. It really must be the wonky internet connection. So we're gonna Spooky, who always makes me work, right? It's the weekend, Spooky, and I'm supposed to be on vacation or building a cabin. But yes, I believe, listen, here's what I'll say. I'm not sure if my children and my wife are coming here tonight. If they're not, there'll be another show today. We have an interesting piece on UFOs and the bubble, the echo chamber. And we can do that later this evening if things pan out. Mark said, my lawyer suggested I participate cautiously in discussing that lawyer's client, and I'm a nobody. Yeah, well, listen, here's what I will say. Points for Lue Elizondo. That lawyer that he hired is an absolute bulldog of a lawyer. Like, if I had somebody talking smack on me or defaming me or slandering me, that guy might be on my list to hire to back off my critics, right? That guy's a hell of a lawyer. That's all I'm going to say. You can look into his history. I did a little bit. And what I said to myself is I got to be a lot more careful when discussing Lue Elizondo based on this bulldog lawyer that he has. And by the way, I've been threatened by a lot of so-called lawyers, but most of them were jokes. If I got a letter from that guy, I would take it very, very seriously and hire an attorney right away. I wouldn't even talk to him. So there's some levels to this situation. This is not some podunk small town lawyer that doesn't have, a lot of experience or whatever. This guy is a bulldog. That's what I'll say. This guy is a bulldog. He is a hell of an attack dog lawyer. And maybe that's what Lue Elizondo wants, is he wants a hell of a bulldog to back off the people that he believes are defaming him or slandering him or being unfair, right? Yes, and somebody is suggesting, this is Space Exposure, is suggesting that bulldog lawyer is simply using his reputation to intimidate. Yeah, maybe, But again, I want to be very clear in that if somebody is making factually inaccurate statements about Lue Elizondo, he has a right to execute legal action against them, and he has a right to hire a bulldog attorney and defend his reputation. The problem here is that Lue Elizondo's own statements contradict, his previous statements contradict his other statements, and the Pentagon statements contradict what he said. And, this whole thing is so murky and problematic. It's like a hall. It's like what's that one phrase that I do like from Linda Moulton Howe? It is a hall of mirrors with a quicksand floor. That's what this situation is. It's smoke, it's mirrors, it's obfuscation, it's misdirection. Did he really run a program? Did he not run a program? Did it have $2 million in funding? Did it not? Was that $22 million programs really investigating werewolves? Was that information that they were investigating werewolves as well as UFOs left out of the New York Times article on purpose? This whole thing is a smoke and mirrors mess. And, I would much prefer to never speak about Lue Elizondo again. In fact, I'd be happy if he just, rode off into the sunset and wasn't around anymore. And that's another thing, this cult-like atmosphere around him. These people, they just ignore facts, right? They just ignore the facts, and they viciously attack anybody. They viciously attack anybody that doesn't speak positively about Lue Elizondo. And I find that very, very troubling. And I also find troubling the fact that Lue Elizondo used sock puppet accounts to argue with his critics. Why is a grown man using fake accounts? I don't know. Like I said, all this is very murky. It's a bunch of smoke and mirrors. And that's what you get into when you get into intelligence agents. They're trained to do this stuff, to muddy the waters, right? And the waters with Lue Elizondo have gotten so muddy that even professional journalists don't know how to report on him. Did he run that program that he said he ran, or was there no program? Was it funded or wasn't it funded? Why is the Pentagon saying he had no assigned responsibilities? But then he all but admitted he had no assigned responsibilities. And like I said, I can say that I run a program. I could just make up a program and say I'm the director of it. Doesn't mean it's a real program or that people should respect me for running my imaginary program. None of this makes any sense. I am up to my eyeballs in conflicting statements about Lue Elizondo, but I will say this. I am going to make it a point not just because of the bulldog lawyer. But I have thought, what if I've been unfair to him, to Lue Elizondo? What if I have not been fair enough? You know, I think I have, but I'm going to make it a point to do an extra effort to be fairer to Lue Elizondo. And I'm going to reach out to him for an interview for the 100th time. Do I think he's going to come here? No, because he knows I'm going to ask him about Guantanamo Bay, and I'm going to ask him about what contractor he works for. I'm going to ask him if it was legal or ethical for him to be involved in this situation whereby 3 videos somehow made its way out of the Pentagon, and then he profited from those 3 videos for 5 years now. And he's the guy who filled out the forms. You know, I have a lot of questions that I don't think he wants to answer. And UFO John Doe says, dude's listening for sure. Well, let's hope it's him listening and not the bulldog lawyer who may come after me. You know, I got enough problems, and I don't need a lawyer like that on my ass. That's for sure. And again, I just want to say that guy is a hell of a lawyer. So one thing I will say is that Lue Elizondo is very smart. He's a very intelligent man. If you're going to have an attack dog lawyer, get a good one. And he certainly did. Here we have some of the clearly. What? Why is everyone still confused about things? Maybe because the Pentagon said he had no assigned responsibilities around UFOs. Maybe because the Pentagon said that he was not the director of a program. And even he said it wasn't a program, it was an activity. And maybe because somebody lied to the New York Times and said that they ran a $22 million UFO program. That's not the case. The facts don't line up with that, right? Maybe people are still confused because Lue Elizondo keeps making conflicting statements. Wasn't long ago that apparently people stopped calling him the director of ATIP and started calling him the Pentagon UAP portfolio manager. And that was for a while now, the last couple of months. And now we're back to him saying that he was the director of ATIP, not the Pentagon UFO portfolio manager. I don't understand any of this myself. It's very, very murky. B. Baker says, Lue Elizondo, could you please show us a pay stub for your work as UAP portfolio manager? Yeah, UAP portfolio manager is just another made-up title. And I think they're backing off of that now because that plan to retcon his story didn't work, you know? Yeah, good thing I have an apocalypse cabin to escape to, UFO John Doe, for sure. Good thing I have a cabin. So, look, friends, that's all we got for you. We'll call it a short one today. But I'm glad that I was able to come here, and certainly I want to be sure that everybody understands that I give my full support to John from the Black Vault. And by the way, should he happen to be sued by this lawyer, I will give as hefty a donation that I can to John from the Black Vault's legal defense fund. I'm hearing that the sound is bad. I apologize for that. It's probably due to my wonky internet connection. So we're going to bounce on out of here, friends. We may be returning later tonight after all their other UFO show hosts who've decided that I'm lazy or I don't work hard enough because I don't do enough shows. We only do shows if we have something worthwhile to talk about, just for your own information. I don't just ramble every day about nothing to grift super chats or whatever, but it is what it is. So that's all I got for you. I do want to thank Rather Be Squidding because I stole that clip from him, and I want to thank Lue Elizondo because I stole that clip from of him talking about being a counterintelligence agent, and also want to thank Dark Journalist because I stole a clip. He really explains what counterintelligence officers do better than I ever could, and so we stole a clip from him as well. We certainly want to thank Spooky and Sixth Sense and B. Baker and the others who helped make this show possible. And certainly thank all you kind and generous benefactors. There's instructions on how to help us if you're feeling generous in the description of the video. Also, how to go subscribe to Spooky's show as well. All right, so that's all we got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambion, reminding you that sometimes the truth is hard to get to, but the journey is its own reward. Good night, friends.